Hello, welcome to Sport Unlocked at the end of Qatar's World Cup journey from the bid 12 years ago to the tournament. It's finally been completed. I'm Rob Harris from Sky News. I'm joined by Tariq Panja from the New York Times and Martyn Ziegler from the Times. Well, it's finally happened. After years chasing his dream, wanting the biggest prize in world football, he finally got his hands on the World Cup in Lusail Stadium on Sunday night after Argentina's victory over France. Salt Bay.
Yes, Rob. Very good. Yeah, Salt Bay, the infamous, famous celebrity butcher stroke restaurateur, it's caused a bit of a storm actually by sort of going onto the pitch somehow wearing FIFA accreditations, pestering Argentina, Lionel Messi for selfies, and actually holding up the World Cup trophy, which is actually in breach of FIFA's own regulations. Any idea how he might have got that accreditation to get on the pitch, guys?
Well, if you followed his busy Instagram account over the last couple of years, you will have seen there's a figure who's particularly close to him, none other than Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president. He, I think he said he's the number one, just like football is the number one sport, and just like football, gold-leafed $1,000 a plate steak unites the world or something like that. Ziegs?
Words to that effect. But Rob, I mean, there's quite he's a bit of a sort of ludicrous figure, sort of, but I mean, there is actually a more serious aspect to this, as around sort of cronyism and how somebody like that can get on the pitch, don't you think?
Well, I first asked Gianni Infantino about his association with Salt Bay in March 2021 at the IFA press conference, which was our first opportunity for some time to speak to him. And it came some weeks after he'd been at Salt Bay's restaurant filming what looked like a promotional video, effectively, for Salt Bay's Instagram by talking it up and promoting it. And since then, we've seen him quite often appearing in Salt Bay videos, including at this World Cup in Qatar, with him late at night, I'm told, after he went to Salt Bay's restaurant in Doha to celebrate a council member's birthday, but there he was appearing in it. And I think one of the sort of wider issues on this is, even if you think Gianni Infantino has a right to eat wherever he wants to eat, there are questions to be asked about the fact he didn't mix with regular fans. We didn't see him at all with regular fans, but there he was. Very, very often he's been seen at this place with its steaks that cost hundreds of pounds with gold leaf painted on them. And he was constantly at World Cup matches. He was introduced to the King of Malaysia, wasn't he, by Gianni Infantino in the VVAP eras. And one of the things often said by FIFA against media not being let into certain events is because they think media would hassle the guests. Here we've got Salt Bay on the pitch hassling players with
I think
political leaders.
Yeah, you're right there, Robbie. It was this introduction to the Malaysian king. It's all available. At least one person who's very transparent is Salt Bay, really, because he seems to post all of his videos and photos of all of these interactions. Malaysian king. I think there was the brother of the crown prince the brother of the emir. Sheikh Jassim there. There is Sheikh Joanne, the other brother, in his Instagram feed. Various football legends, Ronaldo, etc. But the point is about access, isn't it? And privileged access.
FIFA did stay quiet for several days until on Thursday, saying in a statement, following a review, FIFA has been establishing how individuals gain undue access to the pitch after the closing ceremony at Lusail Stadium on the 18th of December. They say the appropriate internal action will be taken. Well, it's going to be interesting to see, does someone get the blame within FIFA? Because what's clear is obviously a close association between Infantino and Salt Bay potentially allowed him to be in the stadium. Infantino was on the pitch handing out the World Cup with the Emir. Who actually allowed Salt Bay onto the pitch? Was there something that someone perhaps thought they were following what the FIFA president might have wanted? And quite frankly, might they get the blame as a result of this when perhaps they were doing what they believed Infantino would have wanted, seeing his friend able to take part and go where he wanted to on the pitch?
Well, maybe he's going to be an official sponsor for the 2026 World Cup, because they've paid a pretty price for that association. I mean, if he's got it for handing out a couple of free meals, he's done very well. And you can only say from his point of view, a great marketing job. But it's FIFA, I suppose, who has to answer to their sponsors and about the free publicity this man's been able to generate. I mean, there's also the element that perhaps there is an investment in his restaurant chain from the Qataris, and that might be an element of this. But given that no one talks about anything and that questions aren't answered, I guess we just have to wait and see if we'll find out.
And the way he did the sprinkling salt gesture on the World Cup, on the pitch. Is Gianni Infantino just able to invite who he wants to as the FIFA president to a World Cup final?
Yeah, you can do that. Absolutely. Give them all the hospitality you want, but you don't give them access to the pitch and to pick up the trophy, which FIFA's rules state should only be handled by a very select few, i.e. World Cup winners and heads of state.
And guys, it wasn't the only kind of controversial stroke different element to the post-game celebrations. I think we should talk about what happened to Lionel Messi actually in the seconds before he went on to lift the World Cup trophy, when the Emir of Qatar, the ruler of that country, who spent $200 billion to bring us and the World Cup and everyone to that country for the month, placed this golden fringed black cloak known as a bisht on a traditional cloak, we're told, for special occasions in the Gulf and the Arab world, over Messi's shoulders just before he lifted the trophy to provide that iconic image. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, there was an interesting debate around this. I mean, some people say this is a sort of a gesture in the Arab world, to show great honour. But other people think it's a sort of way of Qatar sort of putting its own mark on the celebrations, and actually it sort of takes away from the image of a player in his shirt. And it wouldn't have, for example, if you were playing in Rome, would in a World Cup final there, would you expect the Pope to put a kind of robe on the winner? No, you wouldn't. So I think it's I thought it was a strange move, and I actually don't think it looked particularly good.
Could this not be seen as Qatar just wanting to add a local sort of flavour to this big moment, the celebrations after so many years building up to the tournament, and wanting to honour Messi in some way with this bisht?
It could be, Rob. But the fact they've got him on the Lusail Stadium pitch in Qatar, in a city that essentially was created for the World Cup, having that final, I don't think anyone's going to not remember or the moment where it happened. It was in Qatar, and the Emir was on the podium there, himself in the bisht, of course, as well, handing the trophy over. You would have thought that might have been enough, but there's another element, Martyn. You spoke about Salt Bay there and the FIFA regulations about who can enter the field. There's also FIFA regulations on attire, what people can wear during celebrations on that particular podium, and FIFA have used this rules on what players can wear very strictly, if you think about it, during the tournament. Of course, the One Love armband, the reason why the European teams were not wearing those in the end were because apparently, according to FIFA, they contravened the uniform dress code, and the same thing, they have rules for the podium. So there is that. But I suppose whoever pays the money gets to pick the tune, and Qatar definitely spent a lot of money on this thing and on FIFA probably over the last month, guys. So there's that perhaps, but and also there were some people in the Arab world who say, "What's all the fuss about?" Pele wore a sombrero in Mexico City, but I don't remember him being up receiving the World Cup trophy at that moment. I think he was on the shoulders of fans and players on the field. Would it have made a difference? I think it would if the bisht was placed on Messi during celebrations after the trophy lift.
Yeah, I think that would have been fine, actually, and completely different.
Of course, this was a World Cup that began with that Gianni Infantino speech for an hour. I feel migrant worker.
Feel gay.
And then really, we didn't hear from him again in a press conference setting right the way until the closing days of the press conference. FIFA went a month without any sort of operational press conference. We reflected on it in the past, how up to 2014, there'd be regular press conferences, the chance to answer questions of this World Cup. Yet they called it the best World Cup ever.
I mean, obviously, you can argue it was sort of the best final ever, but apart from the football, how would you look back on this World Cup, guys?
Yeah, and that's the important thing. You have to separate the football. And the football was very exciting.
There are probably three things to separate here. We've got the bid and how Qatar won the tournament, how they built up the country for the tournament, and the ongoing issues and suffering of migrant workers. Two did die during the tournament in instances. Then you've got the operational delivery of the tournament, which is a lot of FIFA staff who are out of the spotlight, away from that political leadership, and are actually just working long hours without any sort of profile. You've then got the many, many volunteers who are actually working for nothing to help deliver this tournament. And then you've obviously got the football itself and how the results are on the pitch. So all those aspects to unpick.
For me, there's a bit of a lingering bad taste from this World Cup. Not just because of the things we've talked about, the Salt Bay and the Bisht, and I just think it sort of underlines some of the worst things that FIFA stands for, which is sort of ignoring issues around human rights and transparency, and doing what I think is the best for the game in order to sort of satisfy national pride, money, and it just feels like it's divorced from the grassroots of the game.
Ziggs, look, for me, this thing shouldn't have been there. The football obviously will be the dominant image for most people around the world, because why shouldn't it? They're football fans. It's their favourite competition, and they're going to remember the moment Lionel Messi finally lifted the World Cup after an epic World Cup final and an epic World Cup in many ways. There were some incredible moments of drama in that competition. I wouldn't say there was great football, but there was a lot of great drama. That said, look what happened. You can't divorce this incredible feat of football from the 12 years that preceded it. Rob mentioned it's built on this corrupt bid. And then what do we get? We get 12 years of this very controversial build-up. I don't know. Even now, we're sitting there. The World Cup finals finished. The circus has left town. And we can't have an accurate gauge of how many of the poorest people in the world died building this thing. And that is a stain on all of us, as far as I'm concerned. And then we have the issues of continuing issues of human rights. And then after it, this World Cup finished in this beautiful golden stadium with a city that was built around it in order to house this beautiful golden stadium. There were 7 others built for this event, and they were all beautiful in their own different way. But what is the point of all of that stuff? And that's my constant feeling. You're walking around this place, and it was suspended in reality for a month-long football tournament. Everything was shut down. Perhaps nowhere on the planet could do a tournament like that, and I don't think nowhere else on the planet should do a tournament like that. We'll be looking back at the legacy of this thing for years to come. And yeah, there's always going to be these good elements. It's great that people from the Arab world got to host a tournament, got to see a tournament, got to visit a tournament. There were women in abayas in the final. I've not seen that before. I think that's brilliant. Morocco getting into the semis. It was all really good in terms of that type of thing, but it was built on something that was extremely grotesque.
Obviously, it's like oddity for the whole country hosting this World Cup. We've been to other tournaments and life continues the day after the tournament, maybe with a bit of sense of a come down. But Qatar is one of those places that will probably seem incredibly quiet in the days after the World Cup because it is small and infrastructure was massively built up just to be able to host this tournament, to host far more fans than the actual local population.
Well, we don't even know how many fans actually came. I mean, we got these numbers, but being in the stadiums, we'll never know how many fans, Rob, were in that stadium. Did they give us some numbers, I believe, at Gianni's presser? But
well, there's a lot of sort of double counting, I'd say, even when they announced, I think, more than 1 million people through the fan zones. They were saying more than 1 million fans. When you ask more in depth, they suddenly acknowledge the fact they were counting people multiple times, potentially going in. So actually you have to question some of those numbers. And, there are those experts who believe Qatar might be inhospitable in 50 plus years' time, given the changing climate. So I think it'll be fascinating then to see how this tournament is viewed, all this spending effectively to host a month of football, although they will say it's about investing for the future and building up the infrastructure to be able to invest the gas wealth now.
Yeah, but that means let's just give them every single tournament in every sport for the next, I don't know however long. That's the only way this kind of makes sense to me, that this is this permanent, perpetual host of sporting events. Otherwise, you've got this very, very tiny place with a very tiny domestic population, with these follies, these enormous arenas dotted around the place. Don't forget they had a bunch of other stadiums for their domestic football league that are mostly empty anyway. And Rob, just a word here for the weirdly, the backdrop that filled these stadium seats in some ways were the migrant workers. By accident, these people got to see games they probably would never have been able to go to. But that's not what, thanks to Qatar, it's an accident. The fact that they couldn't get, I guess, regular people to fill all the seats. You're bussing in, Indian, Bangladeshi, Ghanaian, Kenyan, Nepalese labourers to football stadiums. I guess we'll never see that again either.
Well, they were letting them in sometimes when the stadium seemed perhaps quieter after kickoff. One point you're saying about Qatar becoming maybe a host of many sports events in future. It is one of the things often discussed around the Olympics, rather than actually spending on all this infrastructure around the world to host an Olympics. Why not have a permanent host for it? They've often talked about, would you have a permanent host in Greece or something? So maybe as a sports hub, if these venues are of use, there is some logic to it. Although environmentally there are challenges, because there are many months of the year when, unless you air condition the streets, it'd be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I look forward to you recommending that to the IOC, that Qatar to be the permanent Olympic host in June and July.
Yeah, exactly.
For the winter or summer games.
Just, you mentioned Gianni Infantino's final press conference. He dropped a bit of a bombshell there, I think, didn't he? And which also has some fairly important sort of impact on the international match calendar for the future.
Yeah, he did. To the surprise of the rest of the football world, or those who have a direct interest in it, particularly the European clubs and leagues, I guess, that he announced a new expanded Club World Cup that will have 32 teams in it from 2025. There was the aborted 24 team one. Do you remember that was supposed to be played in China? Somehow we've got 8 more teams, and it's going to be in 2025. And you can imagine the reactions, Ziggs.
Yeah, so we've got a situation now where we've revamped the World Cup, and it was going to be up from 64 to 80 matches with 48 teams. And now looks like that's going to be revamped without even playing it. Then we've got the Club World Cup, which was going to be 24 teams, and that's already being revamped and expanded without it being played. It's just, it's just growth for growth's sake, or power, or money, what?
I mean, you get the sense, and perhaps Gianni Infantino might have given it away a bit in an interview on local television on Monday, the day after the final, when joking. I think he said about a World Cup every 6 weeks or so. And perhaps there's a sense that FIFA doesn't like being out of the limelight for so long. And often in the past, it was only really in the spotlight every 4 years. The growth of the Women's World Cup means every 2 years to some degree as well. But actually, maybe the FIFA leadership sees the way they are fated during this World Cup period, with world leaders like Macron wanting to come and spend time with them, and they are in the spotlight like this, that they want actually more and more and bigger events where they're increasingly important rather than domestic and continental competitions.
Yeah, well, Gianni certainly seemed to like the spotlight. He found it hard to give up the trophy, didn't he, in that last moment, the World Cup final. But yeah, Macron as well. That's another person. I also don't know what he was doing on the field, to be honest, consoling Kylian Mbappe. The relationship between top politicians and the football hierarchy, certainly in the kind of Gianni era, seems to be particularly acute. If he's not with MBS, he was there with Macron. Really, no kind of idea of the separation of sport and politics. And Macron, just like I think the Qataris, has gripped onto sport as a way of providing a platform for him too. So I think that should be noticed. But yeah, in terms of these events, it's like they're making it up as they go, Ziegs. the statements from the World League Forum, the European leagues, FIFA Pro as well, just the lack of discussion as to what is happening in a very vital moment. We're talking about this new 10-year global football calendar that Arsene Wenger is trying to develop, and these announcements seem to just be made.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. You do wonder. This is FIFA thinking. Well, I know what we'll do. We'll ask for 32 teams, and let's say that's what we want, and that we're going to have 104 matches at the World Cup, and 39 days instead of 30 or whatever, and then perhaps people won't kick off so much if we agree to reduce that slightly. Is this a bargaining position that he's taking? Probably, but even so, it sort of it doesn't sit well with the rest of football.
And if you think we've seen this all before, well, we went through this in 2018, 2019 with the battle over the agreement on a Club World Cup then to be expanded. It was only in 2019 that the ECA seemed to reluctantly go with the plan, having really resisted it. They actually did sign off on the 2014 Club World Cup. COVID and issues with China then delayed it. And here we are again, but it's not just going with the previous agreement, which he could have just implemented. It's now we want 32 teams.
Yeah, but one of the reasons we really liked this World Cup from a sporting point of view, let me talk about myself, is the absolute scarcity of this thing. You know, if it's every year and we're sort of deluged in 4 games a day football World Cups, it's just not going to have that same kind of value, surely. It's exhausting just being a kind of viewer or someone trying to document this event, let alone people participating in this thing. The value is in the scarcity in many ways, and same with quite a lot of big football. And that's just, that's what the Super League guys, I think, don't seem to get. The idea that fans want to watch Real Madrid playing Manchester United and just keep eating cake every day is what everyone wants. But the reason we kind of love these moments is that they are so rare, surely.
Well, absolutely. It's the rarity that adds value as well. The fact it's a game people look forward to. It's why perhaps even some cup finals don't get that singular focus as they used to. I mean, obviously the Super Bowl is every year, but actually there are fewer NFL games during that regular season. It's just August to February basically, isn't it? So it's a really shorter period. And that's what you get that scarcity with then the anticipation.
Yeah, but are you as excited that even the Super Bowl fans can't be as excited as the fans of the winning World Cup teams? 5 million people on the streets of Buenos Aires going absolutely nuts. You just won't get that with anything else. It's just there's nothing that is comparable with the World Cup final and the effects of it, and we're seeing that now on the streets of Buenos Aires. And Morocco, for example, where the Moroccan team arrived in Rabat, all those thousands of people in the streets there. Croatia too, again, arriving in Zagreb. You do something like that every year, you're just going to lose what makes it so beautiful.
Some of the numbers in terms of US viewing figures: more than 25 million people watching the World Cup final. The only bigger US soccer audience was in 2015 for the Women's World Cup final when the US beat Japan, and that took place in a more favourable prime time zone because it was in Canada. And this World Cup final on US TV even beating World Series baseball games as well. More recently, obviously the Super Bowl still at 112 million in the US, but certainly it is the rarity, as we see with the Olympics, that garners interest. We see in perhaps athletics, the Diamond League meetings don't get as much focus. The athletics worlds, which are every 2 years, don't get that singular appeal, but the Olympic athletics finals do get the world watching, although nowhere near the same numbers as you get for a football World Cup final.
Yeah, and actually, when you mentioned the World Athletics Championships, that's a good example of something which was every 4 years and then became every 2 years and lost a lot of its luster. That's for sure. I really think that's true. Yeah, less is more. Less is more.
Something else from the closing days of the World Cup was a story I put to FIFA, something I'd been looking at for some time, and I asked them about on the Friday, which was the disbanding of the Human Rights Board. So it was one of the signature policies introduced after Gianni Infantino took charge. They introduced this independent body. It had trade unions, it had
representative of sponsors, as well as experts in the field of human rights. Well, they had their mandate, first of all, until 2019. It was expanded and extended until 2021. It issued its final report in early 2021 when it said there was still an ongoing need for independent oversight, particularly in the build-up to and around the 2022 World Cup. It never happened. At one point, actually, FIFA effectively actually tried to get someone on the phone to me who was in hospital to discuss the story, to perhaps try to dissuade me from actually doing it. Then we reached last week and they suddenly said in a very long-winded statement it hadn't been introduced. There was no new independent oversight. In fact, only on Friday at the council meeting did they introduce potentially a subcommittee of the audit committee to look into human rights with no names. We don't know who's going to be on this board. So here we are, the end of the World Cup, and the human rights board that did exist from 2017, independent board, there isn't any replacement. And if it sounds familiar again, not long after Gianni Infantino took office, FIFA disbanded its anti-racism task force.
Yeah, good tell that, Rob. Yeah, I think it's sort of quite convenient timing that it was sort of disbanded for the period in the run up to this World Cup, and it may depending on who's going to be bidding for the next World Cup, and if it's Saudi Arabia are going to go for 2030, be interesting to see who is on the board, if it lasts, what they will say about it, because surely nobody can say that human rights is not a big issue in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, one other thing from the FIFA council meeting was an announcement made by Gianni Infantino himself about himself, which was saying his first period as FIFA president didn't count as his first term, which means he can stay in power potentially until 2031. That would give him a stay in office from 2016 to 31. What did you make of that as it was announced?
Well, I thought I thought that's exactly what was going to happen, if I'm honest, because he clearly really loves being the FIFA president. But again, it's a question of checks and balances. And there's another element to this, Rob, that the statutes, if you read the fine print, it's almost like designed just for him, because if something happened to Gianni Infantino now and someone else came in, the clock starts immediately. Unlike he won't get the free 3 years or 3 years that Gianni got. And I'm wondering, it reminds me of dodgy tenders in countries when they know the company they or the person they want for the job. You have to the job is open to everyone, but you have to be 5'8", right-handed, brown-haired, and live at that address. It's like the specific statute change in order to keep Gianni in place.
You're not 5'8", you're not 5'8", Tariq.
Just about, yeah. We need a little bit more in the statute change. But the other thing is, you mentioned the audit and compliance department and how it all seems to funnel into that one. That department has accumulated all sorts of power and all sorts of now human rights, Rob, you just mentioned. And that is run by a former Indian judge now, Mukul Mukdal, who ended up taking that role after his predecessor, I think, after Miguel Maduro left, and he got even more power. Now, he's a curious fellow as well. And I remember him from the Russia World Cup in 2018 at the luxury 5-star Lot Hotel. One of those places where we're trying to just sort of hang around hoping some of these people talk to us. And it just happened to be Mr. Mukul Mukdal was there talking to one of the hotel receptionists, or one of the FIFA they're called, what are they called? They're called the guest relations managers, just to insist and to double check that he had a suite in this luxury hotel. And I was thinking, God, this is the audit and compliance person. Wow, they really are treating him well. Anyway, separate to that, he's the guy who will have to see if everything's above board.
One other thing on Gianni Infantino, of course, he was on the reform committee that helped to draw up the new term limit. So if we think back to 2015, we've had the wave of arrests in the May at the Bora Blatter, then got re-elected. He then subsequently, days later, said he would lay down his mandate at some point in the future. It'd be an election. Then in the September, at the point that Michel Platini, as UEFA president, was the favourite to be the next FIFA president. At the same time, there were meetings of this reform committee featuring people from all the confederations, including then UEFA General Secretary Gianni Infantino. Then Michel Platini got suspended after the investigation that brought him and Sepp Blatter over payments and bonuses in the November, by which point Gianni Infantino had already then become the candidate preferred by UEFA for the election. The Reform Committee reports there was the recommendation for 3 terms of 4 years, 12 years maximum period for the FIFA president, signed off by Gianni Infantino, who then in February 2016 becomes FIFA president. We now know that 2016 to 19 doesn't count as his first term. It's 2019 onwards are his terms, and of course he'll be re-elected unopposed as it stands in Kigali in March.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is, it's a real shame that these sports bodies like FIFA and UEFA don't actually have proper elections, and the incumbent just seems to all possible opposition disappears, and they don't have anyone standing against them. It's very undemocratic, isn't it? But it's obviously what the incumbents want. But I think it's a big shame.
But Aziz, it's because of the system, isn't it? And the system has remained, despite the FBI arrest in 2015, there's people being carted off to jails. The system seems impermeable when it comes to any kind of change. It's still these 211 nations voting for a FIFA president. It's a very powerful position once you're in as well, because then you are dispensing football's largesse. Gianni Infantino, on the Sunday morning before the opening game of the World Cup, had that meeting, this FIFA summit, no press allowed, unfortunately, where he told the national associations they'll be getting more money. And that seems to be it for most of them. Round of applause, bit more cash in the coffers, and we move on. There isn't much talk about governance or any kind of structural change. More sinecures, more committee seats, more per diems. It goes on and on, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of the national associations are to blame, I'm afraid, because I did have a conversation with a FIFA person not too long ago, and I said, "What?" I asked, and I said, "Why is this sort of constant drive for more money, more power, more of a share of the game? Why do you need more money?" And he goes, and he just said, "Oh, well, the national associations want it, and they elect us, so that's what we have to do." But so yeah, it's quite a cozy number being the president of a football association. If you get all the perks that go with it, invitation to the World Cup, generous per diems, you want to stay there, and in fact you want to get more.
And in fact, all it needs is 5 federations to nominate a candidate, and they can stand in the FIFA election. And no one did, despite Europe spending several years railing against Gianni Infantino, his presidency and policies. Europe still didn't put up a rival candidate.
Yeah, it's quite pathetic, isn't it? I think there's about four nations. I think 4 European nations. I think the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, and I think Germany have said they won't give their backing to Gianni in Kigali. But it doesn't. It's a bit of a just public relations exercise at that point. Yes, they've shown their unease at him being there, but there isn't, as you say, an opposing candidate, and he'll sweep to a victory by acclamation, presumably.
So as we draw an end to the discussion on the Qatar World Cup, it's been more than 12 years of reporting for us. How do you feel it's now all over? And Qatar has happened. The World Cup has happened. All the years build up, all the reporting on the investigations, all the focus on human rights, with how they would deliver this event. It must feel strange now, the fact this is now in the past.
Yeah, it does. It's been fascinating, and it's been really interesting reporting on it. It's been frustrating and sort of disheartening as well often. But so I'm quite glad it's over.
Yeah, for me, I think the realization, if we didn't know it before, is in the end, money wins. It got what it wanted, it paid for it. We move on, and it's a blueprint for other wealthy nations.
And that about brings the end to Qatar's World Cup journey. So much controversy we've reported over the years surrounding it. Qatar's always denied wrongdoing in the bid. Ultimately, the money won. And as a closing thought, once the teams and the fans all left this week, it was time for Qatar to announce its budget. And they said revenue would increase 16% this year for the country to $65 billion. They'd be spending $54.6 billion. So while a lot of the world deals with financial strife, Qatar is in fact talking about having a budget surplus of around $8 billion. Now you can see why sport's going to Qatar. Well, that about brings an end to this week's episode of Sport Unlocked, looking back on the Qatar World Cup. Myself, Rob Harris, Tariq Panja and Martyn Ziegler, thank you very much for listening. Goodbye for now.